Hi, this is Stevie. I thought I'd share with you a project that I've been working on to paint the Santa Clara Mission in Santa Clara, California. I have a little bit work left to do on it. I've done quite a bit already, but I still have to finish that walkway and breezeway on the left side, and then some other details around the mission itself. So let's get started. I'm using a Princeton Heritage round brush, and I like the Princeton brushes. I use them quite a bit. Right now I'm mixing a shadow color, kind of a medium value shadow color. I'll be mixing two different shadow colors. The other one will be with ultramarine blue and burnt sienna, because I need to have the two different values to put into that walkway. Right now I'm getting the darkest part of the walkway done with my dark ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. And notice that I don't mix them on the palette. I just mingle the colors together. I like the look of that, and just makes it more interesting. Then for the other lighter shadow color, I'll put that on some of the sides of the posts that are turning away from the light source. And I'm also going to get a little bit of color on that overhang over the breezeway. I didn't want to leave it stark white, so I used a very diluted yellow color on it. I'm getting in the tree, the trunks of the rose trees that line the walkway, and I'm using a little bit of permanent rose for those pink bushes. Very, very thin permanent, really watered down permanent rose, because that's a strong color. Adding some green to the bushes, and I'll go back in later. I'm going to make some corrections to those bushes as well, because I didn't like how dark the green was on those bushes in the front. So I'm going to be using some gouache later on in this video to show you how I fix that. So just kind of going around. The next thing I want to do is work on the mission bell, and I'm using a little bit of a color called Horizon Blue. It's made by Holbein, similar to turquoise, but it's very opaque, and I may be applying too much here. I may have to go back and remove some of that, but I'll do that later on. I'm trying to give that mission bell the look of oxidization, and so the next thing I'll do is add some orange to that, some transparent orange. That color, transparent orange, is made by Schmincke, and I really like to use transparent colors whenever I can, because it helps to keep your colors clean. But I can already see that bell is way too dark, so I'll have to fix that later. Just going in, adding some more of those shadows in the breezeway around the building with my lighter value of shadow. Now adding some dark green to the bottoms of those bushes underneath the rose bushes, just to differentiate them a little bit from the grass and other foliage areas. Now I'm going back to reinforce the color in different parts of the church, again to just show that form as it rounds around, just to make the values different. Darkening the doors on the church. I'm using burnt sienna with a little bit of ultramarine added in to darken that up, so it doesn't go quite black, but is still a little bit darker than just the sienna. Now using some of my transparent orange on that tile roof, and I will add some other colors as well, but I wanted to get that lightest color in first. Then I'll add a mixture of cadmium red and burnt sienna to get some darker areas in those tiles. I used a lot of red. That's going to be pretty bright, but I'll live with it. I do like bright colors. And get the front of the tiles. I tried to give them kind of a weathered look. Now, moving over to that area in front of the church, which would be the street. It's not really a street, but kind of a cement walkway. But I didn't want to leave it just white, so I wanted to add something there. So I wet the paper first and then spattered in a little bit of color. I think it was a mix of raw sienna, burnt sienna, and some of that transparent orange. And I just smooth it out a little bit. And the cat there, I call it the mission cat, was a little kitty that I saw in the breezeway when we were walking through the university. Adding a little more color to the rose bush in the front, the yellow color. And I want to start making some corrections there onto the green. So I got out my Winsor Newton gouache, and this is just the permanent white gouache. And what I do is I mix that with the watercolors on my palette. So I squeeze out a little gouache, and I picked up a little bit of green gold color, which is a light green, and that made it more opaque because I want to try to cover that green color that's already there. I just don't like how dark it is. And the gouache will dry a little darker, so I'm going to have to see how that goes. I don't know if this is light enough or not until it dries, but I'll let that sit, put that on the other dark areas as well, and just let that sit while I work on something else, and that I can go back to it in a few minutes. So now I have picked up I mixed the gouache with a little bit of permanent rose, very little permanent rose, and I'm brightening up the pink rose bushes with a little bit of that color. I just think that lighter color looks a lot better. Otherwise it draws way too much attention. So just adding a few little dabs here and there. I'd like to fix that one in the front too, the yellow color, so I'll have to go back and do that. I'd like to get that a little bit brighter. Just adding in a little more of the permanent rose by itself to get some value there, to give form and shape to the rose bushes. And now I mixed a little yellow in with the gouache, and I'm trying to brighten up the yellow rose bushes. And I can already see that I need a better green. So I used my Grumbacher yellow green, which is an opaque color, and I mixed it with a little bit of gouache too, just because I wanted it really opaque and bright. And that seems to be helping. It's brighter than the other light green that I put down before, and hopefully it'll stay that way when it dries. But the yellow green, I think it's called phthalo yellow green. It really does brighten things up. I don't use it that often because it's an opaque color, but it can really come to the rescue when you need it. Again, just adjusting my values a little bit. Now cleaning up some edges. That's also a Princeton brush that I'm using. It's a Princeton 1/4 inch flat. Very handy to have for cleaning up edges like that. Mixing up a dark color again for the eaves on that building, and I mixed I don't have a black on my palette. I like to mix a black, and I used my mixture of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna to make that black, reinforcing the shadows a little bit. This lightens as it dries, so sometimes I have to go back in and apply a little more color. I also noticed that I needed to add some shadows under those eaves, and I forgot to add a shadow in this video to the other part of that breezeway right under that eave, and I'll have to go back and do that later on. I just wanted to point it out so that you'd be aware of that. Now I'm going in and fixing that mission bell, picking up some of the color. Since it was so dark, I wanted it to stand out better against the dark colors behind it. So I just lifted some of the color, and I'll just leave it that way. I think I've put a mission bell in every one of these paintings that I've done. I've done 14 of the 21 missions so far. I've sketched 14 of them. and painted them. So at some point in time, I'll do those in a future video, just to show everyone what I did. I do plan to do all 21. I just haven't gotten there yet. I do all of my ink work with this Pigma Micron pen. I like that because I'm left-handed and it does not smear. It dries really quickly. And I will now move to a different pen for the lettering. On every one of the missions that I've done, I've gone in and added lettering for the name of the mission. And I've done calligraphy for many years, gosh, for probably 40 years. I don't do a lot of it anymore, but I do like lettering. So this is a good way to stay in practice. So what I've done is I've penciled out the placement and the size of the letters. I'm just using a straight edge there to make sure I get my lines straight. And first I do my letters in pencil. And for those of you familiar with calligraphy, I'm using Celtic, an adaptation of a Celtic alphabet. That's one of my favorites. And I just wanted to get the placement in there. I kind of struggled with that on this one because of the long name. Now I'm using my kneaded eraser to erase quite a bit of the pencil work, but to leave enough that I can still see it. The lines along the bottom the pencil lines along the bottom of the lettering I can erase later on. Now I'm using my Elegant Writer pen, which is a felt tip calligraphy pen. And because I'm left-handed, this is the way that I write to get that 45-degree angle. I write sideways. And I learned that in my very first calligraphy lesson 40 years ago in the city of Burbank. Somebody who had taught calligraphy was in the class and gave me that hint. She said, if you're left-handed, turn your paper sideways. And I never had a problem with that. For some reason, that clicked with me right away, and it's much easier to do. Now, I'm erasing the lines, although I did wait in between to make sure that ink was dry before I started erasing, or I would have smeared that ink all over. So there we have it. Here's my finished mission painting. Please leave any questions you have in the comments and I'll get back to you. Thanks for watching.